so that people can see.
That's working. Okay.
Okay, all set?
Yes, Chairman.
Great. Okay, we'll call this meeting of the Planning Commission to order. And will the secretary please call the roll?
Robert Jurgel,
Absent.
Carol Wagner,
Present.
Bradley Abel,
Absent.
Jody Rich present, Michael Saunders,
Present.
Brian Lewis.
Present.
Okay. For the meeting, we'll begin with any public comments, and we ask that those would be public comments that address an item that is not on our agenda, but that you would like the commission to hear about. If there is we'll ask for hands if anybody has a comment at that time. And we'll go through each item on the agenda. I'll read the petition number, and Carlos, as our staff, will do a brief presentation on the petition. We'll have discussion. We'll ask for discussion from the audience, and then we will vote on the item. Okay. Okay, so the first thing I need to ask is there any public business for the commission tonight on any issue that's not on the agenda?
Chairman, if I may. Yesterday, we were informed of Mr. Sanford's passing, Sanford Goldman, who was the chairman of our Planning and Community Design Commission. I believe he was a member of the commission since 1982, and a couple of years prior, he served on the Board of Building Appeals, or Board of Adjustment. So I did want to recognize Mr. Goldman, along with his family. Heavy hearts go out to them. And there he was a great mentor to, I think, a lot of people. And he did this, as a volunteer to his community for over 30 years. Never running, so never being compensated in any form or fashion. So heavy hearts go out and to his family, to Rita, and such. So
Thank you,
Ms.
Carlos.
Waldman has had a memo from the rabbi, I believe.
I created a statement and I gave it to the rabbi on behalf of the city of Olivette, and I've printed 2 copies, and you can read the comment that was represented on behalf of the city to the family. To the rabbi.
Thank you, Missy. Our council person, liaison, Missy Wallman, is here tonight. I'm going to add that for the record. Carlos, I got the opportunity to serve with Sanford on the commission for many, many, many years. And I probably speak for all of us, but he will be missed very sorely.
Absolutely.
Is there any other comments from the public? Hearing none, we'll move on to new business. The first item on new business is 12 Forsythia Lane. Petition type is Community Design and Concept Stormwater Management Review. Description is for a new single-family home. Petitioner is Jim Woodruff, Hibbs Homes. Property owner is Ocean Cone. And for this item, I must recuse myself, and our secretary will take over.
Chairman and both acting chair. About an hour ago, we had received an email from the petitioner that he will not be able to attend. Concerns about being out 2 days, so we will try to coordinate this. We were with the understanding that Ms. Wagner would be recusing herself in the discussions. And then I also found out a couple of minutes ago that Mr. Abels can't attend, so I would be short of a quorum even just to go over the discussion. So at this point, I don't believe there's any need for a change. And just to defer this item.
Then I will assume the gavel, and we can move on to B on the agenda, 12 Lynn Court. Petition type is site plan review. Description for fence variance. Petitioner is Jesse Klein. Property owner is Jesse Klein. Carlos, you want to talk about this one?
Yes, Chairman. We received a request from the owners of a new home being constructed at 12 Lynn Court. This item was before the commission about a year and a half ago regarding the construction of a new home and a swimming pool in the backyard of a property that was recently subdivided. The petitioners are required by the building code to enclose the pool area with a minimum 48-inch foot fence. When we were doing the review of the pool, they were able to accommodate the fence enclosure in there initially. But their initial petition, or the first petition they had submitted, was that the fence would be run parallel with the existing home along Old Bonham Drive, or Old Bonham Road. And after discussions noting that would not meet Chapter 422 or 435 fences, they withdrew the request and modified the fence enclosure for the pool area. They are back, though, as the construction has commenced and they're getting ready to enclose the pool area. They would like to pursue the fence setback in there. What you have on your displays here is that it would be, the request is for a 60-inch or 5-foot fence enclosure for the pool. Again, the building code requires that the pool area has to maintain a 48-inch enclosure. And there, the fence is a decorative ornamental iron fence. It would be 17 feet from the Old Bonham Road right-of-way, but 22 feet from the actual sidewalk. Note, when this property was subdivided, requirement was that they dedicate 5 feet to the city of Olivette for any future road improvements along Old Bonham Road. Of course, all this occurred after the roadway was and the sidewalk was improved. The code allows them to submit a written request to the commission requesting the variance that they can prove a hardship, not to the extent that you would in the Board of Adjustment, where you have to identify that there's no other alternatives, or that the property itself prohibits the use of the property. This is under the Plan Commission review process, where the commission considers it somewhat of a site plan review with some leniency in terms of, how does it impact the neighborhood, type of precedent that it would set, and impacts to the surrounding character of the street, the neighborhood, or the community. So we received the petition. The current fence that was submitted is in this area here. If you follow the mouse line coming along here, what they like to do is kind of run the fence parallel with the building along Old Bonham to the rear of the property, and this is the excess area that they would enclose. Again, the petition requests 60 inches. The building code requires a minimum of 48 inches. And there, we kind of did a schematic to kind of place in there. So in no case, should this be used for what it's actually would result in. This is a fully transparent fence. It's ornamental, but just kind of gives an idea or indication of how it would look three-dimensionally on there. We couldn't make it completely transparent, but we wanted to give some type of visual of the setback on there and the character that fence would have along the corridor. Again, the commission has the authority to determine if a variance can be authorized if there's an unreasonable or unnecessary hardship on a particular property, and the commission has the ability to do so up to the extent or conditions that it warrants are necessary. And there, from our perspective, what we look at in terms of when the commission considers a variation from the fence requirements is, one, what is the spirit and intent of the code, especially as it applies to fences along the front yard area or the street side in there. This is a corner lot. It is subject to 2 street sides. The intent is to maintain a green area along our street corridors with a distance and setback and such that that provides a general character in the neighborhood. Of course, Old Bonham Road being one of the primary residential corridors in our community, we're very sensitive to its appearance. Again, so when you discuss this, you have to consider what the intent of the code is there, and what has the applicant done to try to address this. This is now more of a transparent fence as it is a privacy fence, which they're not requesting. Secondly is, this is along Old Bonham, our very important residential corridor in the southern part of the city. And what precedents it states in there. And you can see at the lower right-hand corner a little slide where, when you take a look at the corridor, there's so much vegetation in many of the front yards. This would be what you would see if you were going eastbound on Old Bonham before passing this lot. And under the previous conditions before the site was cleared for construction, you couldn't even see, that property. The tree foliage, the shrubs went just about all the way to the street. So it's kind of contrary to what the spirit and intent is, but vegetation doesn't require a permit, and it's not regulated. Then the next thing to really consider is, as they make the review, the code only states a minimum of 48 inches is necessary for the pool enclosure. The petitioner has submitted a request for 60 inches or 5 feet. And the commission has to have a discussion of whether, that 12 additional inches is necessary in there. So you have to, balance it in that. Petitioner submitted various pictures in your packets. You have a written request along with some references to some reasonings for the variance request. Again, if you look at the amount of area that would be enclosed, it's not a significant amount. And there, it's not like they're trying to move their front, access of the front yard forward towards Old Bottom. It's just running it parallel with the face of the home. Again, it is a transparent fence. In this case, it's an ornamental fence. We did talk with the petitioners, and we also looked at other options that could be considered in the vegetation wise and such. But in the end, remember, the pool by the building code is required an enclosure in there. It's been shown that they can do that within the current development plans. I'll let them talk about, though, it creates an awkward condition or kind of a strange use of that backyard and its usage in there. Again, you have copies of the type of fence that would be put in place. If the commission considers the motion, of course, the motion should be considered in the affirmative. Be glad to answer any specific questions regarding that, and if not, I have the petitioner, the owners of the property, or the contract of the property declines, and also the developers here if there's any questions.
Thank you, Carlos. Questions from the commission? Mike?
Carlos, I'm a little confused. The graphics in red seems to indicate the fence starts right at the corner of the house, but the graphic sheet 2 seems to indicate the fence actually starts, 3 or 4 feet, maybe 3 foot back from the corner of the house. Where does the fence actually come off the house?
It's an extension of that front elevation, so right along the edge, right here.
So that's where they're proposing to put it?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And let me, if I can get a more clear visual in there. I'm going to move Mr. Lewis over. Sorry, sir.
So if you go to the original, the first.
You are correct. And again, the original had it step back
Yeah, but even
a bit,
this,
but it wasn't necessary.
but the first sheet of this one also shows it step back, and that's what's confusing me. So what, is it's not?
The intent is to run it parallel along with that front building line.
So the dimensions that you called out, you said 17 feet at the back, right?
Correct. What would be the southwest corner, or the closest measurement to the street.
can't read these dimensions on this thing, but that looked like 17 feet, but it looks like it's set back. Yeah, so.
Carlos, could you go over the height again, height question?
The height that's being proposed is 5 feet or 60 inches.
And there need 48 is required for a pool?
A pool enclosure has to be a minimum of 48 inches.
Hey, Carlos, if the minimum is 48, why do we have to prove anything that's higher, I guess? Is it there a maximum?
Good question. Any fence that extends beyond the front building line, and in this case, that front building line runs parallel with Olive, so it is in an angle. That minimum, the maximum height of a fence is limited to 36 inches. So when,
Okay, I thought you said the minimum was 48, so are these conflicting?
no, yes, they would, and that's why the variation is being requested. So right now, the front building line kind of runs along this northern angle here. If you can see the mouse extension. This area here would be considered part of the street side or front yard setback, and that's limited to 36 inches.
Okay.
Okay? They're proposing, and if they're gonna use that fence to be the enclosure for the pool, it has to meet a minimum of 48 inches. So therefore, anything that extends in this red area, you know, is limited to 36 inches. If they use it for a pool enclosure, it has to be 48 inches. Their request is to have 60 inches, whether it's the barrier, the pool enclosure, or the 60 inches. It would require a variation from the commission if it extends into this red area. That 17-foot measurement, and I apologize, Mr. Saunders, is taken from that point. As we ran a line parallel to, it's a measurement within the plan set itself.
Do you have the page 2 in your PDF here that we're looking at, the
No,
first
we can
page?
pick it up though. Hold 1 second, sir.
I mean, your graphic and their graphics aren't matching, and that's what I'm confused with. They're close, but they're not matching up.
Is this the one you're?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at, and that is different than what we're showing with the red. See how the fence sets back a couple feet?
Actually,
And the triangle's a little smaller, and so it's not a huge thing. I'd prefer the fence setting back a little bit from the corner. I think that's a little nicer approach, the way fences hit houses.
I'll let them address that, but if I recall correctly, this was the initial application before the construction of the home and the pool.
Got it.
And this was the initial request, and after discussions, at that time, I'm not sure the owners were involved, but with the developer, we noted that, you know, this would require a variation, and therefore it was modified and brought back into that angle that you saw on the PowerPoint slide
Got it.
here.
Okay.
And that was the final approved plans for the construction of the new house and the pool. Sorry about that. I see what you're saying of where that setback and all that looks different.
Does that answer your question, Mike?
It does. So what we're approving is what we're seeing in red.
That
not
is
what
correct.
is on that sheet.
Joe, you have any questions? Brian? Where'd you go?
I was just curious, Carlos, if you had you brought up the vegetation. Did you have any concerns on the lack of vegetation, or was that just a call out?
No, we had the discussion of doing that if the pool was not back there, they could easily do a, you know, a screening in the form of some type of vegetation or so, but that, you know, but the building code will require that they still have to have an enclosure, a structural enclosure in there. So I'll let the petitioners address that, but they were looking at probably putting some landscaping in there. We didn't reference it from our end because it's something that's it's difficult to maintain or enforce, you know, 5, 10, 20 years down the road. If they were putting, let's say, some arborvitaes or something like that. So we're looking at it solely of whether the structure would be authorized within that setback area. They are looking at putting some landscaping along that front.
Yeah, it should be noted, there is a landscape plan attached to our package also with some planting along it. So that'd be nice to hear from the petitioner when it's
I
done.
think so, too.
Yeah.
We ready? Okay. Petitioner want to address the commission?
My name is Doug Thorne. I'm the owner of Douglas Properties. I'm the developer of the two-home site there on Lynn Court. And so I just want to maybe set the table.
So Doug, could you go to your address, please?
Do what?
Your address, please.
Oh, 1025 South McKnight Road, 63117. And so Jesse and Lindsay were with me before we broke ground. They were as early on as you could possibly be. And so we designed this home together with some straight lines, and the pool from the beginning was an important part of the package. And like Carlos said, trying to protect the integrity of Old Bottom Road, that's really what we're trying to do here today, because, you know, as many homes as I've built in this community, I want everything that I do to stand out to be, you know, very proud. And we really want to be able to be driving down Old Bottom Road and walking down that sidewalk to have the straight lines continue. I think as you're walking down that road and you see this house and you see the fence on a strange angle, I think people would say, why is that? Compared to the straight line, they would say, oh, that's a beautiful house. So I think that would be an improvement, having that line straightened out is really what we're trying to do. And I wanted to introduce you to Jesse and Lindsay. Jesse has some more opinions on what we're talking about here. And I think we're going to find out that we have some flexibility on the height, you know, whether it's 5 or 4. I don't think that is the most important thing. And they have some flexibility on that if that's a concern. And then also, it is the full intent to screen it with evergreens, so you really aren't getting on the Old Bonham side of the fence. So you really hardly will see it when it's all planted out. That's the intent. And with that said, I wanted to turn it over to Jesse and
Sure.
Lindsay.
Thanks, Doug.
Hello.
Hi, guys. I'm Jesse Klein. This is my wife, Lindsay. We are new to Olivette. We currently live in U City and have made an investment in the city of Olivette. We're excited. We don't have kids. We're looking forward to starting a family here. Having the opportunity to have the elementary school down the street was appealed to us. Quite frankly, that corridor was appealed to us, and we have all intentions to maintain that integrity of that road with this variance request. The idea here is a couple things. I just want to make sure, as I want to echo Doug's comments, we are not, you know, we've kind of been moving in a bunch of different directions here, trying to get everything done. So you can see here with the landscaping, that's not the proposed landscaping in the sense of the angle, but the idea here would be to have the fence, as Carlos demonstrated to the group, have, you know, have evergreens on the outside so that it would maintain, you know, protection. One is an ornament fence, so you can see through it. We have animals, and we're actually, Lindsay's expecting in the fall. The idea here is provide protection to our family, but also provide protection to the public walking down the street. Kids always see pools. It's enticing to hop in the pool, right? So we're trying to show protection on both sides. We want to maintain that appeal. We've discussed with neighbors on kind of all around us our intentions. They have we had 2 letters of support. I trust that you received the handout that we typed up as well. And also the idea here is to maintain the integrity of the architecture of our home. You know, if you've seen it, it's very straight lines. That was intended. You'll see that's kind of a architectural characteristic throughout the plans themselves. From the front, if you would ever go inside, the inside's very straight lines. So the idea here would be having the fence come off the back, whether it's inset, like Michael was asking, inset off the side. We're flexible on that. The idea, though, just cutting it across where it's essentially touching the pool, you know, is less than ideal. And so, you know, that was our thought. We're happy to answer questions or what our intent is. But our goal here, we're making an investment in the city. We'd like to, you know, our intent is to continue to maintain this with the level of investment that we've made so far in this home.
Could you tell us a little bit about why you're asking for the height variance? What are you looking for?
Yeah, we have 2 dogs, and so just making sure that they are protected and that one of them is a jumper, and so we just want to make sure that he can't jump over the fence, to be quite honest. And so I think that 48 is probably fine. We went with the 60 just to be completely safe, but if that is the difference between you guys allowing it and not allowing it, we would rather go straight back at a 48 than angled at a 60.
Great. Mike?
Carlos, I'm curious, the height, once they get to the rear yard, we don't really, it could be 60, right? It's only a variance because this is a front yard.
Correct.
Yeah, so, yeah, I'll throw out my 2 cents. I'm in favor of what you're doing. I would like to see it step back a little bit versus lining up with the face on Old Bonham, and
The
I don't-
second plan that you saw, that was the Baker plan. That was from that was the architecture actually from the people who would be installing it. So that is actually the plans.
So that is, the intent is to set
Yes.
it back. It looks like it's 2 or 3 foot.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know that I have any issues with 5 foot versus 4, but I'd certainly be willing to listen to the other members of our board regarding height, especially if it's going to be hidden behind. I gotta believe your intent is to screen it as much as possible with the pool back there, so whether you'll even notice the height with the screening. But I'd certainly would like to hear what other people have to say about it.
I have a quick question. Is it your intent to keep the height at the same height all the way around?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so you wouldn't do like shorter in the front?
No.
Okay, just wanted to check.
And there have been discussions with the neighbors. There are the neighbor to our west, so who's facing Old Bonham, he has all intent to put in a fence at some point. We had conversations with him, he proposed this, he saw it, he agrees with it. Our neighbors to the north, which is on Lynn, they also want to continue the fence, and we've had discussions with that about the type of fence.
About
So,
splitting, yeah.
so just, we'll have, you know, there'll be uniformity amongst the 3 lots.
Jody, you have any questions? Ryan? Any questions? Okay.
Chairman,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
the one thing, again, I think the commission needs to have a discussion on the spirit intent and what precedents it sets. You know, in the discussions we had at a staff level with the petitioners, you know, within the past year, there's the percentage of variations that have been granted is significantly high. So it makes the, you know, the enforcement or how it's taken difficult. And, you know, I think ultimately there needs to be a serious discussion about amending the ordinance if variations are going to be granted, and looking at what, under what standards or conditions. In this case, again, this is a fully transparent fence, and it's done. But we've had some other wooden fences and all that have encroached in setbacks, and the standards have been different amongst all of them. And I think we need to be careful that they're not taken arbitrarily, and that we have defined parameters of when you know, maybe 36 inches is being too rigid, and we need to reassess the ordinance, especially if we see them coming in and that they're being granted. You know, that means code's not working in the intent that it should be. And again, not to hold this permit up, but we probably need to have that discussion in the future and reassess, you know, and there, it shouldn't be that, you know, you have to make that request every time.
I'll just throw this out to get things started. My preference is to give them the area variance for the fence, but to keep the fence at its standard height, not to give them the increase on the height. I think
When you
for
say
a front.
standard height, you talk about code 48 inches, not the 36, the 48 inches?
Correct.
Okay.
Right. Because this is on Old Bottom, it's highly visible to the whole community. And I think that in this case, it does make a difference. So I can understand and why they feel the need to move the fence and for the location to go straight. I think it would look a little strange if it did not. But I prefer the lower height.
Yeah,
Anybody else?
The petitioners were open to that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I support you 100%.
Ready?
I support you as well.
Brian?
I'm fine with that. The height doesn't bother me, but I hear what you're saying, Carlos,
Yeah.
in terms of the challenge of the slippery slope. But to me, then that's something that maybe we need to discuss in a more holistic sense in the future. So, but otherwise, I'm comfortable with that proposal.
Great.
No, I very much appreciate the ornamental fence design. I think that's wonderful.
That made a big difference for me.
Yes, it did. Like to make a motion?
Go ahead, please.
Motion to approve the petition for site plan review to authorize a variance at 12 Lynn Court to allow for the construction of a 4-foot black iron fence located within the Old Bottom Road front yard. This says 17 foot from the right-of-way, but I'm going to preface that's set back from the corner of the house 30 inches. Is that about what, yeah, approximately 30 inches. As presented in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development dated March 19, 2020, subject to any staff conditions noted herein.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further comments? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Welcome to Olivette.
Thanks, guys.
Next item on the agenda is item C, text amendment for construction signs, section 415.290B.3. Petition type is a text amendment. Description is amend current regulations for the size, height, and number of construction signs. Petitioner, City of Olivet.
Chairman, there's been a couple inquiries with the activity going on the Olive Boulevard corridor regarding the limitations on construction signs. And when we took a look at the code, and those limitations start in the residential district, and they set up the standards that are probably well within reason with the type of activities we see for residential construction or so. But now that we're seeing more activity on the Olive Boulevard corridor, and we look at larger assemblages, the ordinance doesn't seem to be proportionate with that. So what the staff is asking is for the commission to consider tiering the current requirements for construction signs, and really it's labeled construction and subdivision real estate signs, based on the lot size, and then also to allow for a variation process for those unique conditions when we have something out of the ordinary. Again, right now, if you have a 10,000 square foot lot, the sign regulations allotted to construction signs is the same as when you have a 14-acre property, which is that's what we're dealing with right now. There's no consideration to topography, size of property, location, placement, visibility or such. It's just pretty uniform. We think this ordinance will give a little bit more flexibility. And again, it creates the kind of conditions that we want to kind of encourage that the commission, that you can consider things such as the lot size or the placement, topography, or even the character of the design of that. The current text, again, no matter what type of property, limits the sign face to 32 square feet, a height of 8 feet or 12 feet for a trailer, and 1 per development entry. Under the proposed text, we would break it into 3 tiers. One is continue to keep the existing conditions for lot sizes under 120,000 square feet, allow for an increase for lots in excess of 120,000 square feet, and ultimately have a variation process for those considerations when either the lot is in excess or has some unique conditions that warrant some leniency to those regulations. Be glad to answer any specific questions.
Carl, so this is primarily for sites along Olive Street Road?
It would, any property within, it would apply to any property. A majority of the lot sizes over 123,000 square feet are going to be on Olive Street Road and in the industrial parks.
I was just gonna ask where 120 square feet came from.
It's been a number we've been using consistently with the COR district, the MU district, and it comes close to the 3 acres.
Yeah.
Even though it's 43 something, it's just so consistent with some of the other codes we use.
Carlos, is this something that you're gonna put in ordinance form for us to review?
That is what you have in front of you,
Okay.
within your packet. So it would go from the current requirement to a 3-tier system, using the current requirements to be applicable to sites less than 120,000 square feet. So nothing's changed in that. And then for sites in excess of 120 square feet, allow for a doubling of those conditions. And finally, allow for a process of site plan review if somebody wants to look at something greater.
And the height does change also then, right? You go from 8 foot to 10 foot, or 12 foot?
Correct.
Any questions from anybody else on the commission? Brian?
No, I generally lean to Carlos and Jonathan on this one.
Any comments from anyone in the audience? You want to speak, Mr. Yaz?
Greg Yowitz, 6 Heather Hill Lane. I think that amending the code in this way does take into account that the current code gives the same amount of signage to a 10,000-foot lot that it would to, say, a 14.8 acre multi-hundred thousand square foot development, and should have some gradient in the ability to do that based, again, on the size of the lot. And so I, as a developer, I would endorse this heavily.
Thank you. Any other comments? Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion. Motion to recommend approval and forward to City Council an amendment to the Chapter 415 sign regulations specifically regarding the size, height, and the number of construction and real estate signs under Section 415.290B.3 as presented before the Commission on March 19th, 2020, and subject to any conditions noted within the staff memorandum.
Second?
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Great. Next item on the agenda is item D, Olive Crossing, formerly known as Olivette Gateway, located at the southwest corner of Olive Boulevard and I-170. Petition is a variation request through site plan review, description, variation to the size and height of proposed construction sign. Petitioner Greg Yawitz, Keat Properties, property owner, Keat Olivette LLC, Keat Olivette Gateway LLC. Carlos.
Chairman, we received a petition request for a conditional approval. This is, of course, subject to the recommendation that the commission just put together regarding construction and real estate signs, that if approved by the council, the petitioner is seeking to place the sign identified here at Olive Crossing, which is formerly known as the Olivette Gateway, which is a 14-acre mixed-use development at the corner of Price and Olive. And now that you can see the site, the size of the site with the clearing that's going on, they're looking to place a V-shaped sign with two 24 by 12 display boards, 12 feet in height, 6 feet above grade in there. This would require it to be considered through the site plan review process. So this is where the variation comes into play. The commission then takes a look at what are impacts both within the site and the surrounding. In this case, the placement will be behind the existing drive lane that leads to the Office Max facility further south on the site. It's set back pretty a good ways from Olive Boulevard. Its intent is for some visibility off of the interstate and on westbound traffic on Olive in there. We find, we don't see that it would have any immediate impact on any of the surrounding properties because they own, the full 14 acres and everything behind them. And eventually when the construction starts, the lot area is going to get fenced in there will be screened from view, and therefore that's what the request for the additional height is for. I'll be glad to answer any specific questions. Once again, that this would be solely a conditional approval subject to the council authorizing its approval of the ordinance that was just recommended by the commission. Mr. Yawitz, who is the developer and representative of Keats Properties Olivette, is here, and if I can answer any questions, or if not, I'll have the developer kind of reference.
Thank you, Carlos. Questions from the commission? None? Okay. Mr. Yawitz, did you want to address the commission on this?
Greg Yowitz, 6 Heather Hill Lane, developer of now the Olive Crossing. We've rebranded. So one of the reasons that we're requesting this sign, and hopefully you all have been by the site to see the clearing that has occurred, is this is a massive site, number one. Number two, what we're looking for in signage deals with a couple of issues. One is that we'll be fencing the entire development once Office Max leaves. And number two, the interstate is up pretty high. And so we're trying to provide some modicum of visibility because we want to show off what we're doing. And so if we did that on the ground, or if we did that under the prior code at 32 square feet, you wouldn't know what you were looking at. And so we're sort of looking at this to be a sort of a loud and proud of what we're doing signage opportunity. It's obviously temporary until we start putting buildings up. And so we think this gives the site the signage level in scope and scale that it deserves for its size at, I think it's 500, we're at 560,000 square feet of land. And so it's 1 square foot of signage for every 1,000 square feet of land mass, roughly. So happy to answer any questions, but we'd love to do this to sort of show off what we're doing.
Questions for Greg? Brian, do you have anything? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments?
Make a motion?
Please do.
Motion to approve the petition for site plan review to conditionally authorize a variation to the size and height of a construction subdivision real estate sign as presented to the commission on March 19th, 2020, and subject to any conditions noted herein, this staff memorandum.
Wait a second.
Second.
We have a motion made and seconded. Do you have any other comments? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Okay.
I do have a quick question for Carlos. Carlos, do we regulate, if construction fence goes up, do we regulate any screening on that?
There's nothing code-wise, and there, right now, we're encouraging them to put, trying to balance it, the slat, there's a need for some security and visibility into the site. So what we've been seeing is more of that mesh application being placed as opposed to slatting. And there, for commercial properties, we will require, your traditional chain link fencing as opposed to the orange type of construction fencing you'll see on residential properties. That'll be a significant difference, and there's also a height requirement in there. We've had some internal discussions about, whether that fencing, that mesh has to be solid, or if we would allow opportunities for some mural or activity to take place on it. That's why we're providing that variation, because that might be something that we might consider or take into consideration down the future.
That hypothetically, a developer might come in and ask to make the fence not see-through with some sort of graphics that run along the street, hypothetically speaking.
Like in New York.
Like in New York. Make it pretty with pictures versus dirt.
Okay. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Discussion items. City of Olivette Comprehensive Plan. Overview of the 2006 strategic plan and discuss procedures and schedule for an update.
Chairman, if I can ask for deferral on the comprehensive plan.
Sure. I just have one quick comment I wanted to make. Sure. I was taking a look at the drafts that are online, and I noted that the plan for the city of Kirkwood, I happen to really like, and would be interested in hearing what your reaction is when you get a chance to read through it. But I really like the way it was very clear. Each chapter began with the goals for that item, and it included action steps that are related back to the goals for each item. So for instance, if you had a chapter on housing, it would identify very clearly what the goals are for housing, and then talk about the action steps to implement the goals. And I like that approach. I think it made it very readable, and I just wanted to point that out and see what you all think when you get there. Okay. That was, next item on the agenda is stormwater management.
Chairman, we would ask for that item to be deferred also.
Okay, then we have other business, meeting minutes. Do we have any meeting minutes?
Yes, you should have the meeting minutes for the March 5th.
Yeah. Okay, and do I hear a motion that we have received the meeting minutes?
So moved, so motioned.
A second?
Second.
All right. So I guess we have to vote on this. We vote on receipt of the meeting
The
minutes.
original one.
All those that acknowledge the receipt, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. And the next item are reports. So Carlos, you have the first report.
Yes, at the last council meeting, the city council did approve the continuation of the special permit for the redevelopment of the Olivette 66 parcel just down the block here at the southeast corner of Olive and Dealman. and they're for the proposed Firestone development. On March 24th, this coming Tuesday, is the next scheduled city council meeting. We will be having a public hearing on the rezoning of the Plant Haven property at 9514 Olive Boulevard. Then council will hold a work session on April 7th and followed by a regular meeting on April 14th. On the commission side, our next scheduled meetings are the 2nd and the 16th. Mr. Lewis, you indicated both meeting dates you're out?
Well, that was before the world. So in theory now I'm not traveling those dates. So, whether remote or in person, I should be able to join.
All right. Regarding city events, again, with things going on regarding COVID-19, municipal court has been suspended, I believe, through March 27th. The PropC meetings regarding the implementation of the Parks Master Visioning Plan are going to be rescheduled. I'll let the mayor address if there are any specific dates. Regarding the 90th anniversary events, the dinner dance that was scheduled for April 18th has been postponed. And again, I believe the other two events currently are still set for Party in the Park on May 15th and the open house on August 29th. Don't forget, you should have received your 2020 census forms to make sure those go in. Not only are they important to Olivette, but also to the school district, a lot of non-for-profit organizations, our region, and of course the state. Paws in the Park, I'm not sure if that has been rescheduled, but if not, that is scheduled for the 26th of April. Summer camp registration is currently still online. And then, of course, municipal elections that were scheduled for April 7th have been pushed back to the June 2nd, and that, of course, includes Proposition C, the Brown proposal. Regarding the development activity, the I-170 Gateway development, you've seen that tree removal has been commenced. Demolition of the structures should be at any time soon. It will start with the residential structures on Locust, and then they'll be doing the commercial properties along Olive. If the developer wishes, he can address the office max. I'm sure everybody wants to know on that, if that's okay, Chairman. I know that's been a question that's been asked.
Greg Yao at 6 Other Hill Lane again. So, yes, as Carlos mentioned, any day now, we'll start with the building demolition along Locust. We're waiting on 2 water tap removals that are in the street. We now have permits for the properties on Price, the homes on Price, and the gas station. Those have to be taken out of Price Road. And we received a final settlement from the court on Friday. Wow, that was just 5 days ago. Office Max will be turning over the keys to me the afternoon or evening of May 14th. I will have my asbestos people there the morning of May 15th. There's asbestos on the exterior cementitious panels and some inside the building and some mastic. As soon as that asbestos is removed, that building will come down. And it will be the last structure to come down, and then we'll start full site work and keep things moving. You may have seen the tunnel rig that's come underneath 170 from MSD. They're putting the pipe in now, so they'll be off site soon. That's the 82nd Street lateral that we will be connecting to. So, site looks a lot bigger without the trees. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
It's fun to watch out my window at the office.
The one thing we do hope that submissions should be coming in for the plating of the properties and along with the community design reviews for the various structures that would be proposed.
Did he bring that to you today?
No.
Okay, I gave him the check today, so hopefully it'll be here tomorrow.
Okay.
Plat's coming in.
So, regarding the city center redevelopment area, that continues in there. The Ridgegate Capital is now the full owner of all 3 properties. They are commencing their standard investigation work for hazardous abatement and such for county approval to commence demolition. And as far as I know, there's been no delays in the process, so that should be moving pretty soon. They submitted, one of the conditions of the approval was that by March 6th, they had to submit plan revisions that address the streetscape, the setbacks and such. We did receive those. I'll have them at your next agenda meeting. They were able to modify the back end of the garage structure and provide the necessary setback as opposed to looking at where there would have been a variance process or buy property from one of the residentials. They also adjusted the parking along that north property line to get out of the buffer or transition area. So things have progressed well in that.
Carlos, are they gonna build both buildings at the same, are they proposing to build the retail as well as the apartment?
No, so far, my understanding of the schedule is that they start on construction on the garage structure first, and then the apartment structure. They're still marketing the separate building, and I anticipate that probably won't happen until construction's commenced. The Centennial Greenway, the GRG held a meeting with representatives from Union Pacific, who represent a significant component of the trail alignment, which is part of that railroad right-of-way that kind of runs north and south with Price Road, to assess the conditions and look at the probability of acquisition. So that's been moving on. They've worked out an alignment for Napoleon. If you're ever going down Dillman Road on the north side, right before you get Napoleon, which is right before the creek, before the tracks, there's a pretty significant hill that is there, and that's one of the things they've been trying to address on how to come either around the hill and get to the Dillman crossing. And then if you look on the eastern side of that, which is our side, you see that Public Works has done a lot of clearing from the city center all the way north. And of course, Mr. McGregor, our Public Works Director, has been working to, has a design to be putting a trail system along that 100-foot buffer that runs from our city center north up to Dillman, and then it would get extended further north and then connect with the trail crossing in there. So it's kind of cool, kind of neat. Easy storage, site work continues in there. We still haven't received any building plans as of yet, and of course we'll be probably reaching out to them to get a better idea of if there's any impact with the COVID-19 and as things are going in there. Again, I noted the City Council regarding the southeast corner of Dillman and Olive approved the authorization of a special permit in there. The city has initiated discussions with a landscape architect who were the actual architects that helped put together the Olive Boulevard corridor master plan to put together a proposal and a design for where the Veterans Fountain and Olivette and Bloom have been planting in there. And once we'll have something, we'll share that with the commission. I believe that's all I have. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Lucy? City Council report?
I have no further report, other than last night the council held a special meeting, an emergency meeting, which allowed to do the process that we did to implement some new policy right now for this pandemic situation that will allow boards, commissions, and councils to be meeting electronically as in the format that Mr. Lewis is doing tonight, and then our fellow council pro tem, Ms. Springer, did last night. These are different times, and you have to think outside the box so that the city continues to run, development continues. I appreciate that we're not ending up like 2008 again as a result. I appreciate you. Thank you for being here.
And Chairman, before you conclude the meeting, I was hoping Ms. Sondag can kind of talk or extend regarding to the mayor's comments on the video conferencing. These meetings are now being live streamed on YouTube, and we will be providing links on the agendas for access of those. I apologize, everything was moving fast today. And there, I appreciate Mr. Lewis being our guinea pig to do the live streaming. It's using a different program And there that will provide an opportunity to expand it to other members. And okay, we wouldn't have been able to have this meeting today. So thanks again, Mr. Lewis, without being able to have that video conferencing. But as everything,
It's pretty seamless, so thank you.
so as this everything kind of changes with everything going on, I'll let Barb kind of talk about, you know, and if there's any concerns on the meeting processes.
Carlos, can you move that go to meeting up a little bit? Yeah, show your camera. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so we have two things going on tonight, as I said a little bit earlier, in that, one, we have we're live streaming the meeting. So that's kind of exciting. So people now, and Jonathan is actually watching this at home. There's about a 30-second delay, but he's watching you at home. He just sent me a text saying it's really neat, is his word. I think Darren has been checking it out too throughout the night to make sure, and I've been looking, making sure it's still going live. That's one thing, and so that's something that we want to do so that people, if they're unable to come out of the home, they can still participate in a public hearing, or they could still participate in public comment. And that is tied to then the other thing that we're doing tonight, which is the go-to meeting, or the video conferencing. You see Brian, the middle camera is actually, the middle screen is actually that camera. So Brian, Brian can see this room, and Brian can probably now see Darren, can see me, because Darren is now participating in this conference as well. Okay, and Brian, every time what was ever on the screen that you saw during Carlos's presentation, Brian was seeing Carlos's screen as well. So whatever was projected up there, Brian was also seeing. And yeah, you can see it. That's it. Yeah, there. And so a couple of things, as the mayor said, the council took action last night. The council has used a video conferencing at probably about 3 different meetings or so, where one council member has called in and has participated. The law allows that. The only requirements are that the person needs to be able to, the communication with the person that's not here has to be both ways. Okay, so Brian now can through this camera can see you and can see the audience, and the other way is he can also talk to you. Okay, so he's seeing what's going on, and you're seeing him, and you're hearing him speak in real time. What the council did last night was change the ordinance a little bit, open it up to all boards and commissions, so all boards and commissions can use video conferencing. They also changed the ordinance. They changed it as kind of in a permanent status, but they may change it back, but they changed it so that you don't have to have initially, we had to physically have a quorum present. We did that, and I think they did that initially because there was a concern as you move to that technology. If you lose the connection, you lose your quorum, you lose your meeting. We've tested, as I said, enough times that we felt pretty confident with it. And so they got rid of the requirement to have a quorum physically present in the room. They did that because of the COVID-19. And as you see, there was, Darren just got off the go-to meeting. And so you have, 2 people. We could run a meeting with all members of the Planning Commission at their homes, looking on a screen. We send you a link. You click on the link, and then you are participating in that meeting. And we can do that with all members, if we need to, with all members not here.
And because we're doing the live streaming and we're able to take comments from people both through the live stream, and eventually I think we may also have a phone set up, so if people want to call, if they're more comfortable calling, we can still take public comment and those things. And so the idea here being that we want to be prepared to continue business, not as usual, but continue business in this time where people are not supposed to touch their face, sorry, and are self-quarantining or are being more staying at home. So with that said, if people become, if any of you are become, you don't want to come out, this is an option for you. It may come to the point where we ask people to stay at home. We don't, at this point, nobody knows a lot right now. We would not anticipate either any of our boards or the council making really big controversial decisions during this time, because that could obviously, you could, there's nothing that wouldn't, that could say you, but that could stop you from that. But typically when you're doing these types of meetings, if you have something, you probably wouldn't approve a TIF at this point of through a video conferencing. But other than that, one of the things it does, personal opinion, one of the things it does is allows our developers who have already put a lot of money into projects, it allows them to know that we're committed to continuing on. That we, the fact that they're still here is important to the city of Olivette, and then we're still going to be here. We've continued in our normal operations, our semi-normal operations, to try to do as many, permit reviews, to do inspections. We're not doing rental housing inspections, those renewals, but we're continuing to try to work with our businesses and our developers to help continue to move things along. We don't know what the future holds. We know right now that we've all got a lot of financial woes and worries, and so this is just one way that I think that we can keep people safe as well as continue to do our work. And so I don't know if you have any questions. Yes?
What about petitioners? Can they also
Yes.
do it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Had we, so we've done the live stream and we've done the go-to meeting, but this is the first time we were doing it together. And so, and we had a few technical difficulties today as we were kind of trying to get it going. And so, or we would have offered that actually to the people. So,
It's pretty amazing.
yeah, it's kind of cool.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Barb. Okay. Is there anything else?
I do want to acknowledge Darren Mann, the finance director.
Hey,
who's
Darren.
here. He's really, he's the guy that's helping us do all this.
Nice. Very nice.
Thank you, Darren.
And he's here tonight just because I was anxious. He kept saying we could do it. And I
I don't blame you, and Darren, I'm glad you're here. And you're welcome anytime. Anything else? Okay. Thank you, Barb, and we will adjourn.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you all, appreciate it.
Hey, Brian.